The line between life and death is a fine one, and it is sometimes difficult to identify. Although one government has found it necessary to warn its citizens to refrain from playing doctor to trying to determine whether a family member has died, even physicians, nurses, paramedics, and other professionals sometimes have trouble pinpointing the cause of death, or indeed, even whether death has actually occurred. The thought that medical experts could pronounce living people dead may seem outstanding, but this declaration actually happens much more often than we might think. As this list of 10 people who survived their 10 deaths indicates, it's not only Mark Twain who had the occasion to protest that the report of my death was an exaggeration. Unfortunately, Twain's quip aside, such incidents are, even for those who manage to survive their own reported deaths, rarely, if ever, amusing. Number 10. Tamisha Beauchamp. In August of 2020, after being declared dead, 20-year-old Tamisha Beauchamp was dispatched to a Michigan funeral home. An employee preparing to embalm her unzipped the body bag in which she had been placed, only to see her corpse staring back at him. Jeffrey Feiger, the family's attorney, said they were about to embalm her. Had she not had her eyes open, they would have begun draining her blood. Paramedics responding to the family's call for assistance upon finding Beauchamp unresponsive pronounced her dead when they could not revive her after she stopped breathing. She was hospitalized in critical condition on a ventilator. The responders insisted that they followed proper protocols, and officials said that Beauchamp's undisclosed medical history was the reason her body had been released without additional forensics examination. The city of Southfield, Michigan has been sued for $50 million for Beauchamp's wrongful death declaration, and the 4 paramedics who were on the scene are also being sued. Beauchamp's shortage of oxygen inside the body bag, the lawsuit contends, caused her to suffer brain damage. Number 9. Analia Boder's newborn baby. A supposedly stillborn baby lay in an Argentine morgue for 12 hours. A victim, the infant's mother, Analia Boder, says of hospital negligence. 15 minutes after the child's birth on April 3, 2012, she was closed inside a coffin and left for dead in the hospital's refrigerated morgue. During a prayer by their daughter's side, Analia and her husband Fabian Veron opened the coffin. Inside, their child was breathing, and the premature baby was subsequently pronounced to be in critical but stable condition. The couple named their daughter Luz Milagros, or Miracles. As a result of the near-fatal mistake, 5 of the hospital's employees were suspended. The hospital's administrator is at a loss for an explanation. The baby was attended to by obstetricians, gynecologists, and neonatologists. He said they all reached the same conclusion, that this girl was stillborn. Number 8. Charles Crawford. The January 21, 1901 issue of the New York Times reported the strange occurrence of a live man taken to the morgue. According to the item, Charles Crawford, who'd shot his wife Sarah before shooting himself, was taken to the morgue after being pronounced dead. There, Joseph Murphy, an assistant, discovered that Crawford was still among the living. After an ambulance first transported Crawford to St. Michael's Hospital, Sister Soherda visited the vehicle. Her quick examination of him confirmed the suspicion of the police officer in charge. Crawford had died. His body had been transported to Mullins Morgue. There, the assistant saw at once that Crawford was alive. Indeed, the dead man spoke to Murphy, as Crawford was transferred from the ambulance to a truck used to convey corpses into the morgue. Left inside the cold morgue of the unheated building during the dead of winter, Crawford was sure to have died, the newspaper article pointed out. Had he not been rescued, and he was lucky indeed that Murphy was in attendance that night, he was brought to the morgue because ambulances are not attended by physicians and no doctor was on duty at the hospital the night that Crawford arrived by ambulance, since the hospital used the services of doctors on call. Number 7. Walter Snowball Williams. At age 78, Walter Snowball Williams woke inside a body bag after being declared dead at his home in Lexington, Kentucky in February of 2014. He tried to kick himself free, and the next morning a funeral home's employees were astonished to see the dead man was alive. At the nearby hospital to which he was taken, he was declared to be in stable condition despite his harrowing ordeal. According to the coroner, Williams' faulty pacemaker caused the false reading. With his family, Williams' nephew, Eddie Hester, who had watched his uncle being zipped inside the body bag, celebrated his uncle's return from the dead. Williams, who had been scheduled to be embalmed the day after his arrival at the funeral home, was also thrilled to be alive. Number 6. Valduccio de Olivria Goncalves. 2 hours after being declared dead of respiratory failure and multiple organ failure in August of 2014, 54-year-old Valduccio de Olivria Goncalves, who has been diagnosed with terminal cancer, was spotted moving inside a body bag. His brother, who came to the morgue with other family members to dress Goncalves, discovered that the supposedly dead man was breathing. His feet were tied and his nose and ears were plugged with cotton. The Menendro de Ferris Hospital in Bahia state capital Salvador initiated an inquiry into the incident. Hospital directors would meet the team who saw the patient to clarify the course of action taken, a spokesperson for Bahia's health department said. Number 5. Larry Donnell Green. Initially, neither paramedics nor the medical examiner were able to detect that Larry Donnell Green was alive. It wasn't until after he'd been declared dead, placed inside a body bag, transported to the morgue, and deposited in a freezer that he was found to be alive. Green, who at age 29 had been struck by a car on a highway in Franklin County, North Carolina, in January of 2005, is said by his parents to have suffered irreversible brain damage in the accident, resulting in thousands of dollars of medical bills. His family has sued the county medical examiner and the former emergency workers for $20,000 in compensatory and punitive damages for negligence and emotional distress, and they want to ensure that no other families are subjected to the pain and suffering their family has experienced. Paramedics Randy Kearney, Paul Kilmer, Catherine Lamel, and Pam Hayes, and volunteer emergency medical technician Ronnie Wood were suspended with pay. Green was transferred to Duke University Medical Center in Durham, where he was placed on life support and listed as being in critical condition. He was discovered to be alive when medical examiner J.B. Purdue examined his body while certifying the cause of Green's death. Purdue ordered the same paramedics who brought Green to the morgue to take him to the hospital. There has been a terrible error made, and we are on the fast track to getting these problems corrected so we don't face such a situation in the future, Franklin County Manager Chris Cordriet admitted, adding, "It's an unfortunate happening, no doubt about it." 36-year-old Tomyol Jackson, who struck Green, faced charges. Number 4. Premature baby. Apparently, the premature baby didn't like being in a morgue refrigerator. The infant began crying and moving when undertakers removed him from the cold storage at a hospital in La Margarita in the Mexican city of Puebla on October 22, 2020, to hand him over to his parents for the funeral. The child's father urged the baby, who was born only 23 weeks into the mother's pregnancy, to carry on fighting. The little survivor was assigned to stay in an intensive care neonatal unit to be kept under observation. Miguel Angel Flores, the owner of Funeraria Flores and one of the undertakers who had come to pick up the baby's body, said, "We called the father over and he also saw it crying, so we got to the doctor who had signed the death certificate to come urgently." Flores was amazed that after 6 hours inside the refrigerator, the baby was yet alive. "I can't understand how he didn't die while he was there," he said. The refrigeration unit, he observed, was normally used to keep the limbs of amputees. An investigation of the incident is underway. Number 3. South African man. After suffering from an asthma attack in July of 2011, A 60-year-old South African man's family assumed he had died. Instead of calling paramedics, they summoned workers from a local mortuary company. Awakening more than 2 hours later inside a refrigerated compartment, the dead man began screaming, but his shrieks didn't summon assistance. Instead, the mortuary workers fled, terrified they were hearing a ghost. They returned, however, after gathering reinforcements, and the group decided to open the refrigerated compartment. Inside, the ghost was confused and shivering, and the workers called an ambulance. 6 hours later, after being held at the hospital under observation, the man was declared stable and sent home. Sizwe Capello, the spokesman of the Eastern Cape Health Department, said, "The temperature in the refrigerator is designed to keep corpses from decomposing, so you can imagine it's definitely not appropriate for a live person. And the 60-year-old man's suffering isn't likely to have ended even now," Capella suggested. At the village, "I bet the rumor is going around that a ghost is amongst the villagers. There will probably be family members that will refuse to stay the night with him now." In publicizing the incident, the government reminded its citizens that only qualified medical authorities should pronounce anyone dead. It's a message that needs to be heard, apparently. The family's suspicion that their relative had died was verified by the morgue's employees. Ayanda Makolo, who owns the morgue, said his driver, who'd gone to the family's home to pick up the supposed remains, examined the body, checked his pulse, and looked for a heartbeat, but there was nothing. Makolo himself had thought the 60-year-old asthmatic was about 80. Number 2. Rosa Celestrino de Assis. 60-year-old Rosa Celestrino de Assis of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, also spent several hours inside a body bag deposited inside a refrigerated morgue in Hospital Estadual Adeo Pereira Núñez, where she was receiving treatment for a lung infection. Her daughter, Rosangela Celestrino, was called to the scene to identify her mother's body. When Rosangela gave her mother a final hug, she could feel her breathing, she said, and she screamed, "My mom is alive." The looks the others in attendance gave her suggested they thought she was crazy, she said. At 7:20 p.m. on September 23, 2011, during tests related to her lung infection, a doctor had pronounced Rosa dead, and she was carted off to the morgue. At 10 p.m. that night, Rosangela pronounced her alive, and the dead woman was taken to the hospital's intensive care unit. The nurse who first suspected that Rosa had died was fired. The doctor who pronounced her dead resigned. Number 1. Tom Sancombe. Unable to contact her 46-year-old boyfriend Tom Sancombe for 2 days, his girlfriend asked police to conduct a welfare check on him. An officer entered Sancombe's residence with the apartment manager and found that Sancombe had collapsed. Fire department paramedics did not attempt to resuscitate Sancombe, who was cold to the touch and in rigor. He was pronounced dead at the scene at 2:10 a.m. on May 19, 2015, and forensic investigator Genevieve M. Penn called Sancombe's brother John to deliver the bad news. John asked that an autopsy be conducted to determine the cause of his brother's death. At 3 p.m., when a team arrived to transport Sancombe to the morgue, they noticed that Sancombe was breathing, and he was moving an arm and a leg. Later, his pulse returned, and he was transported to Columbia St. Mary's Hospital in Milwaukee. What had caused the strange series of events? The Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's heavily redacted report deleted the findings, and the hospital's spokesman, Evan Solacek, refused to disclose the information due to federal privacy laws. Sancombe's condition, whatever it is, improves daily, his brother said.